I remember asking, is there something wrong with me, or are you not attracted to me, or what? Like, I don't know how to make sense of this, because I'm thinking this would lead to this, and it's really not. And it was just a really good conversation. I mean, clearly you were like, it has nothing to do with you. It's just, right now I'm in the season, and something was going on.
Yes, exhaustion.
Yeah, because we've had that. I tell you, couples typically don't talk about sex.
Which means you have to have a conversation about this. Hey, it's Greg and Erin, and today we're talking about something that we have really been wanting to talk about, and that's physical intimacy and the sexless marriage. Conversations about sex are difficult for couples. I see this all the time within my private practice. And so today we just really want to address what is happening when a couple is sexless.
So when we use the word sexless, maybe it's important to kind of define what we mean. So the research shows that about 15 to 20% of marriages here in the US would be considered sexless, which means that having no sex for 6 months to 1 year, or having sex less than 10 times during the year. And so again, it's important when we use this, because I remember working with a couple one time, and he was kind of describing, it just feels like we have a sexless marriage. And, well, tell me more about that. And he was like, well, we only have sex once a day now. And it was very different than what I was thinking. When I was hearing, I was thinking it was the complete absence for that couple of having sex. And so again, it's important that we define these terms, but ultimately this is not about there's a correct number. This is all about, boy, how can we take this amazing gift, this beautiful gift that God's given us as a married couple, and how do we fight for that to make sure that that's a regular part of our relationship? We say a lot of the times that, we encourage couples to have sex often in a way that feels good to both of you. And so that's going to be defined very differently for every couple. And that's the beautiful part. All of our marriages are different. But to make sure that we're really utilizing that gift that God's given us.
So what is it that gets in the way of couples having sex? Number one, busyness that leads to exhaustion. I hear about this all day long in my office from couples, especially moms of young children who are pouring out, maybe they're working full time and coming home and caring for kids, and husbands too. But I'm exhausted. The last thing I want to do is have sex. So a couple will get in bed and boom, they're sound asleep, and they're not utilizing that time to connect emotionally or physically. And so really it is a big factor based on the season of life that you're in.
So what do we do when we're exhausted because we're so busy?
That's
or
a reality.
Lots going on?
Yeah.
So when you have a couple come in who are kind of talking about that, what are some things you encourage them to do?
Well, I guide them into a discussion about sex and about what they both desire. What do you want sex to look like? How often do you want to have sex? Are you scheduling sex? Are you spontaneous with sex? And so it's important to engage in that conversation between you and your spouse. If the conversation doesn't go well just between the two of you, go in and seek the help of a licensed Christian counselor who can help facilitate that conversation. And as you evaluate what you're really wanting, how do we make that happen? For example, is it that we're looking for times during the week when we're not as exhausted? Maybe it's morning, maybe it's on the weekend. And so we're then planning for how do we most effectively pursue this gift that God has given us.
Your point is we need to be talking about that, as well as, and I think I've heard you say this, and I thought it was, man, that was brilliant, is that couples need to talk about how will we say no to the other. Because when we're exhausted, when we're busy, and you're right, we get into bed late at night and just fall down, and one of us may be wanting to initiate having sex. How do we say no?
How do we decline sex without making it a personal rejection of the other person? And talk about that. What would I say? And some couples even come up with a rule as far as if I decline sex, then within 24 to 48 hours, I initiate. And your rule can look like whatever you want it to, whatever works for you. But it really is important to talk about, how do I decline sex, as well as how do I indicate I want to have sex? Because often couples aren't using words, and maybe there's something that you have talked about, so you know that when my spouse does this or says this, I know what that means, that he's interested or she's interested in having sex.
Yeah.
So it's just talking about it.
Remember, we have a couple friend, and one of them would light a candle in their main bathroom. And
a specific candle.
Yeah, we had to stop because we ended up spending so much money on candles that it wasn't practical.
Or I have another
whatever.
friend.
I mean, figure out a fun way to do that.
I have another friend who sends heart emojis when she's interested in sex. So she sends her spouse a heart emoji of some sort, and they've become very creative with that.
So a second reason why couples maybe aren't having sex is that maybe the relationship feels unsafe. So maybe there's been a lot of disrespect. There's been a lot of conflict. There are things happening, right, that just they don't feel safe. And when I don't feel safe, my heart shuts down. Certainly the last thing I'm going to be thinking about is being intimate.
Right.
If the relationship doesn't feel safe. You know, another thing that we see that creates kind of this, feeling of not being safe within a relationship is even when we weaponize sex. And so we know that there are times where people have used like a 1 Corinthians 7, 3 and 5. And I'm sure you've heard the passage before that's really talking about that a husband should fulfill his marital duty to his wife. She should do the same thing. In other words, they should be having sex. But then it goes on to talk about maybe sometimes it's okay to abstain from sex. So Paul's giving some reasons. But the problem is that people have used that verse to basically say, listen, I want to have sex and I've initiated. You've said no. Whoa. No, your body is not your body. Your body is my body. You need to fulfill your marital duty. It's right there in the scripture. Let's read. Let's open up. Let's go through this. And they misapply this verse. And it's so sad because it's coercive. It's manipulative. It's not at all what Paul was trying to say. What I love about the verse is it starts off, Paul's saying, hey, sex in your marriage is a really good thing. And you guys need to be doing this. Now, there might be times like during prayer or some other reasons why you're abstaining from sex. But he's saying that should be for a limited amount of time. That shouldn't be something that goes weeks, in months, in years within that relationship.
Which means you have to have a conversation about this. And so initiate that conversation. And again, if it doesn't go well, seek the help of a licensed Christian counselor. They can always step in and help facilitate that conversation in a way that you both feel honored and valued and safe.
Because I tell you, Erin, for me, there should never, ever be a single time that a husband or even a wife is using that scripture to manipulate, to weaponize, to get his or her own way. Never. That's not okay. Because I really like what Paul's saying. He's using the word don't deprive each other. The word deprive means that you're not removing something permanently from the relationship. And so he's saying, well, of course, there's going to be moments where you're exhausted and you're not in the mood. Something's going on. Or there's a season within this relationship that just feels so unsafe that he's saying, well, don't deprive each other long term of this sexual relationship. In other words, if there's issues, you guys go in and figure that out. But it is 100% okay for you to say no, for me to say no.
Right.
That there's room for both of us. If you are not in a mood, if you do not, for whatever's going on, if your answer is no, I want to respect that, honor that. I can be disappointed. This is why we're saying, talk about how we will say no.
Right.
Or, and I liked what you're saying. Hey, if I say no, then, then I should be responsible to initiate that 24, 48 hours later.
Right. It's important to remember within a marriage, both individuals matter.
Yes.
There has to be a place that there's room for both. And so within our sexual life, that means that we both matter. No is totally acceptable, but again, talk about what that means and how we reconnect and reinitiate sex, because what you don't want to cross into is abuse. Yeah. And that's where no is not an acceptable answer. And I have heard stories that are heartbreaking over, no, we scheduled sex for Thursday night and it's Thursday night, and no is not an acceptable answer. And that is not okay.
It's not okay.
It crosses into the realm of being abusive.
Well, I sacrifice my own personal integrity if I'm coercing or demanding sex from you. That's because people sometimes will say, well, but sex is a need and I need this. Sex is not a need. It's a wonderful desire, an awesome desire. A need is something that if we don't get, that our very well-being is at stake. And no one, as far as I've ever heard, has ever died from not having sex. So we're not discounting, minimizing the importance of sex. Again, a beautiful gift that God's given us.
Well, and that's the key. Sex is a gift. A gift is not something that's taken. A gift is something that's given. So respect and honor this gift of sex that God has given us.
And so if the relationship is feeling unsafe, and that's a big part of why you guys aren't connecting sexually, again, go in and get help. This is the time to go in to see that Christian counselor. This is the time to go. We have a great program called Hope Restored.
Right.
And this is a marriage intensive, and we deal with this issue all the time. And 80% of the couples who go through Hope Restored 2 years later are still together. So there is amazing hope out there.
Yeah, you can go to hoperestored.com. There's 5 locations across the country where couples can go to attend one of these amazing marriage intensives. You don't have to be in crisis. You can be stuck, and maybe things aren't feeling safe, and you want a hard reset of the relationship. The therapists are the best trained marriage counselors across the country. So we encourage you to evaluate. Do we want to go in and talk to a licensed Christian counselor? Or maybe we even want to go and do a marriage intensive. Awesome. Fight for this gift of sex. Number 3 is neglect outside of the bedroom.
Yeah.
For as a woman, I know that I desire to be pursued outside of the bedroom prior to sex. So it's important that there's an emotional connection occurring regularly outside of the bedroom. Women desire to be pursued. Yeah. However, it's different for men and women. For women, it is this emotional connection. For men, oftentimes sex leads them to feeling connected.
Yeah. And so it's recognizing that we are different in that way. But at the same time, I'm not pursuing you emotionally, or I'm not pursuing you outside the bedroom so that then that guarantees that we're going to have sex.
Yes.
I remember, I think we were doing a Bible study around the Song of Solomon. And that was one of the things, it was almost like this message that I was hearing that hey, to pursue a woman, do A, B, C, and D. And boy, she will respond to you. She will be open and available, ready to go.
Yeah, well, it's even the old myth that, if a man does chores around the house, your dad used to teach the most attractive thing is a Hoover vacuum cleaner. And that's
I've
awesome.
I've never vacuumed so much in my life when I heard that.
But I've heard this within my practice that men will say, I did all the things and it didn't change.
To be any more interested.
Yes, versus do those things as a gift that you're giving, not with expectation. You're influencing your connection.
Right.
And then if things aren't happening, if sex is not happening, have a discussion about it. Yeah. What is going on? Because what we do is we often go to the most extreme negative thought of what is really happening here. And as we begin to believe those negative beliefs, we're going to find evidence of that. There's a term called confirmation bias. And so instead of looking for the negative things, have a conversation, talk about what is really going on, what's keeping you from engaging in this gift, and go from there.
Yeah, because seriously, as I talked about this Bible study, I was then thinking about it because we did have a conversation. I did bring this up going, this is like confusing to me. And so I don't know what to do with it. Like we're hearing all this stuff. So I feel like I'm doing all this and it doesn't seem to be translating into interest on your part. I remember asking, is there something wrong with me, or are you not attracted to me, or what? Like, I don't know I don't know how to make sense of this because I'm thinking this would lead to this and it's really not. And it was just a really good conversation. I mean, clearly you were like, it has nothing to do with you. It's just, right now I'm in the season and, something was going on.
Exhaustion.
Yeah. Because we've had that. I tell you, couples typically don't talk about sex. Erin, you've said that time and time again, and it's so true. There was even an earlier season in our marriage where I was in graduate school and I was feeling so failed. I just wasn't doing well. I was nervous. Am I even going to pass this class? If I don't pass the class, am I going to get kicked out of the program? Now what? And it just, the pressure of that and the discouragement and that sense of failure, it's so built up that that you had initiated probably a couple nights in a row or something. And I had turned you down to where then you were going, is there someone else? Or are you looking at pornography? Like you jumped to all kinds of conclusions, which makes sense. But I'm so thankful that you brought that to me because we had a great conversation. And again, I wasn't even dealing with the emotions of feeling failed. So even talking to you about it helped me to go, oh yeah, that's what's going on. And boy, it put me in a different place. It put us in a different place. It's not like the moment we finished the conversation, we were in this passionate embrace, but it was just such a healthy thing to get that perspective versus concluding what's probably going on or what all this means. So to talk about sex, talk about how to say no, how to communicate about desires and interests, because at the end of the day, remember, we want you guys having sex. Often you get to define what often means in a way that feels good to both of you. I think for me, one of those myths, we weren't even going to make this a myth, but for me, the myth was that, I remember my dad telling me this like literally on the eve of our wedding. So it was kind of like, hey son, let me give you some advice about the bedroom. And I was like, I don't need to hear that from you, Dad. But I remember him saying, man, really prioritize Erin's needs in the bedroom and really put your focus there. I get his heart and certainly I want to serve and I want to think about that, but also want to think about me and my desires and what's pleasurable to me. Both need to matter because a lot of times in our Christian culture, it's like, well, it just matters that you've satisfied him or that you've satisfied her versus, man, this beautiful gift that God's given us. Let's go into this going, both of us matter. Our pleasures as the individual, those matter. And let's make sure that that's a regular part of our experience together.
Number 4, the use of pornography or the addiction to pornography. Pornography has such a negative impact on a healthy sexual relationship. Some couples will ask, well, isn't this something we can use to spice up our marriage?
No.
So often one or both of the spouses are actually dealing with issues around pornography from long ago. The average age that kids are being exposed to pornography is age 10. So year after year of pornography exposure impacts the brain and the body, and it will negatively impact your sexual relationship.
Yeah, Hebrews 13:4 talks about honoring marriage, that the marital bed should be pure, in introducing pornography into a relationship. So even outside of, hey, this is my own personal addiction, but thinking that we can use this to spice up like you were talking about, you're introducing something that God despises. There's nothing about pornography that's going to benefit your marriage, your relationship. It's a Pandora's box. You are opening up your relationship to all kinds of further challenges. And it's not worth it. Like, it's important to talk about, we keep saying, keep talking, talk about sex, desires and fantasies, in things that we want to be a part of our sexual relationship should always be talked about with the couple. And first of all, as long as the couple completely agrees that this is something that we want as a part of our sexual relationship. But number 2 is it has to be glorifying and honoring to God. And that's why even if the couple's saying, yeah, we're okay with having pornography as a part of our sexual relationship, that is not honoring to the Lord. And so again, talk about those things, but it has to also include not just honoring the individuals and our marriage, but also the Lord. Well, as you can tell, we're passionate about this. Maybe this has created some additional questions or some thoughts, or maybe we said something that you're like, I'm not so sure about that.
Yeah, and even use this video to have a conversation with your spouse. Go through the myths and discuss, how is this going within our relationship?
Yeah, so let us know in the comment section how that conversation went. But if you have questions, we would love to know what those are. If you disagree with something, please tell us. Let's keep this dialogue going. Well, if you found the video helpful, go ahead and like it. Don't forget, subscribe for weekly videos. We want to see your marriage thrive in Christ.